you so much. So last but not least, the final presentation for the symposium. Usually it's me or someone like me that gets put in this spot, Andrew. Best till last, let's say that. Andrew Smith is our last presenter, and Andrew currently works as a dairy systems analyst for Australian Fresh Milk Holdings, having previously held the role of dairy manager at Moxie Farms Goolagong after graduating from Charles Sturt University in 2018 with a Bachelor of Veterinary Science. Andrew has a strong passion for the profitability, sustainability and growth of the dairy business. Every time I talk to him, that is definitely the case. And growing up in a family dairy business and dedicating his tertiary education to building a strong grounding in dairy production, including time spent studying both New Zealand and the USA. Andrew is here in the 2020 DRF Symposium to talk to us all about innovative dairy systems. So Andrew, if you could share your screen, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm assuming everyone can see this now. Hold on, I was flicking through my slides as Nick spoke to get some alignment. Thanks, Cameron. Look, I was sitting talking with my partner Emma last night about what I would say as Cameron flicked over to me, and she said, well, what's your elevator pitch? And I said, what do you mean an elevator pitch? I've never heard of one, but apparently it's what you say if you hop in an elevator with someone you don't know. And Cameron, if you could forward that back to me, it's probably what I'd use. So good morning, everyone. Here to wrap things up at the 2020 DRF Symposium. I think I've been coming to the symposium for now, the better part of 10 years. And, you know, it's an honour to be back here speaking today. I'm a dairy farmer. That's certainly how I identify. I'm also a vet, and I've done some postgrad work in ag commerce. Today, I'm fortunate enough to be involved in 2 agricultural businesses, both dairy, that I consider to be exciting and innovative places to work. I'm an analyst for Australian Fresh Milk Holdings. Having previously managed the dairy out at Goolagong that some of you would have had the good fortune of coming to visit and also play along from the sidelines in my parents' dairy business, Mile River Pastoral Company. Look, I live and breathe dairy farming, as Cameron said. It continues to excite me. And I don't know if many of you are familiar with Neil Gaiman, but he once said he waits most days for someone with a clipboard and wearing a suit to knock on the door and say, sorry, mate, party's over, time to get a real job. And certainly that's how I feel. Look, my game plan today is to briefly touch on the concept of innovation. I want to explore some of the themes that I think will influence dairy businesses of the future, and then share my experience at AFMH as well as part of the Mile River Pastoral Company. On to the next slide. So I guess we ask ourselves, what is innovation? To me, it's one of these buzzwords. Everyone thinks it's important, but in my experience so far, I find it pretty hard to get agreement on what we think it is. Tell you what, for what it's worth, if you go to Google, it's probably not going to make things any simpler. You can spend a lot of time trying to work out what innovation means, scroll through a few thousand definitions and find what suits you. So look, for me, the definition that resonated was this notion of executing an idea which addresses a specific challenge and achieves value both for your business and ultimately for the consumer that you're serving. I think though, what does this mean in practice? Look, this is anything that we do day to day, week to week, year on year, that looks at improving the position or the performance of your business. So look, there's not much that you do that couldn't be called innovation if you wanted to. This picture sums it up pretty nicely to me. I think it encapsulates everything that we consider innovation, and I really like the notion of doing more with the same resources. So, you know, if you know someone who gets described as the bloke that things turn to gold when he touches them, he's who you need to be talking to about innovation. Right, dairy businesses and themes that I think will affect the future of where we take them. This is a passion of mine. I'll preface it by saying I think trying to predict the future is a damn foolish exercise. we've just got to prepare for it and know what will influence the future. And I think for dairy businesses, and it was refreshing to hear Justin speak yesterday on the key drivers of his business. Largely these things aren't changing, but I think there are some themes which continue and will continue to influence us. Evidence-based agriculture is something that certainly I think is continuing to grow. Knowing your trade, knowing the science behind what you do and why you do it, and engaging in advancing your understanding of the science and any emerging themes. I thought we had some great presentations this morning, and I'll touch on topics for future innovation at the end, but many of those were covered. Scale and professionalism, this isn't trivial. This continues to happen. Every report that's been produced continues to tell us that average farm size increases. And I don't think there's many dairy farmers in the room that would say that the complexity and the professionalism that they have to operate their businesses with has gone backwards. So, that's a no-brainer. I've put this in bold: the ability to produce to market specification at low cost. For me, this is what will see our businesses make it to the future. The other point I want to make about this is that we spend a lot of time debating the need to produce at low cost. I don't think it's a relevant debate. And my point is, if you do it and the price goes up, you end up rich anyway. So look, it's a safe bet. Continue to challenge the way that the costs involved in producing your product and ways to create more with the same amount. Sustainability in the way that we handle our land, our water, our carbon and our energy will be an important, and already is an important theme in how we manage our dairy businesses. I think a lot of this ties into evidence-based agriculture, but ultimately we must seek to do better every time that we approach the use of natural resources. Seems fitting that we had a session on society yesterday, but for me, our ethical alignment with our consumers continues to be a theme that will affect us. Look, don't take me wrong here. I'm not talking about extremists, but certainly we need to operate our business in a way that the consumers are comfortable with. And I think largely the rule book's not written here, so there's a great opportunity for us to be on the front foot and decide how this is done. The quote down the bottom I've stolen from a bloke called Jeff Daniel. He spoke at a Grow Ag forum a couple of years ago now, and was asked to talk about who'd own the farms of the future. And he said, I think it's pretty bloody simple. The farms of the future will be owned by the people that do it right today. And I think that's as much empowerment as any of us need. Look, I want to dive straight in. 20 minutes isn't long to run one of these things, so I'm going to dive straight into Australian Fresh Milk Holdings. Some of you would be familiar with that name. Others would know Moxie Farms, which is probably, best described as the handle of what is now one of our sites and one of the forming businesses that made the overarching group of AFMH. Look, to give some context, this is a partnership between the Moxie family, the Perich Group, Freedom Foods, and the New Hope Group, and today we're responsible for over 10,000 milk cows and 300 plus people across our sites. To give you guys a bit of insight into the way we run our business, I spoke with my boss Quentin last night about this and raved about some of the presentations yesterday, and I said, look, largely I'm speaking about things that are outside the scope of what we do as dairy farmers most day, but the core remains the same, and we need to continue to do the building blocks correctly, and certainly that the same fundamentals of everyone's business remain important to us. The aim, look, of AFMH today is to develop a world-class dairy farm focused on sustainable production of high-quality fresh milk. We're market-focused, which is reflected by the second part, which involves supporting the manufacture and marketing of premium value-added dairy products. With scale comes an opportunity to focus on the market and produce specifically to the specification and the arrangements required by the market. And so that's something we've been able to leverage as we've grown. Here is what we refer to as the 4 pillars of our business. As the business increases in complexity and continues to grow, we need a lens to focus on what's important and what really holds our business up. And you know, absolutely, that's our people, our cows, our farm, and our opportunity in the market. And you know, I challenge you guys out there day to day that are operating, you know, innovative and successful dairy businesses to consider, you know, the key pillars of your business and how that might relate. So, look, to give a bit of an overview of what we do today, we've got 3 farming sites, the original Moxie Farms in central west of New South Wales, right in the heart of the Lachlan Valley, ranging, you know, through from Cowra to Forbes on different farming blocks there. We acquired Kambuna Farms in early 2019 in the Goulburn Valley, just outside of Shepparton, where we're milking today. And more recently acquired Turumbury Farms west of Echuca, also in the Goulburn Valley, which is in development to be a young stock facility and cropping farm to supply the other sites. So look, that's briefly, you know, where we are. We've also got a corporate office in Orange, which houses, you know, our corporate services team, HR, finance, commodities, you know, the likes. So, look, I think when we talk about innovation, there's 2 types of innovation I really want to focus on here. One is process, but the other is business structure innovation. When we look across our business structure, it is fairly different to what's typical in the marketplace. We're vertically integrated, as the illustration here describes. We own our land and water largely. We're invested in our own farming, producing the majority of forage ourselves. Look, that's obviously got its advantages. It removes an element of market risk. It allows us to produce the crops that we want to produce, and to the quality that we require. It removes the notion of transport costs largely, and it also lets us own the margins in that part of the game. Herd health and nutrition, you know, this is central to what we do, and certainly some of the conversations yesterday around intensive farming hinted on this, and it becomes a larger part of what we do. We've got an ever-growing veterinary team. I think across the sites now, we're certainly north of 5 vets, and I think we're closer to 10 qualified vets involved in the business. Look, along with a number of other highly skilled and also educated team members there, we really are growing a pretty powerful team in that space. Dairy operations are probably the obvious one. You know, we're milking across 3 parlours now, soon to be 5 parlours. We milk 24 hours a day, 3 times daily per cow. More recently, we've taken a foray into waste to energy technologies. I'll speak about that shortly, but that has been a new opportunity for our business, and I think it's an exciting one. I won't be sharing the numbers, unfortunately, and the details that Nick has, but certainly for our business case, it's compelling. We undertake logistics, getting our milk to market daily, and in more recent times, we've explored some opportunities in sales and marketing. I think the other key themes here of our business structure and the model that we take is around scale and productivity. This is a system that lends itself to scale. We're absolutely focused on productivity at the per cow level. You know, as is no surprise, highly invested on a per cow basis with facilities and infrastructure, and optimizing production is the way that you make that work. A key focus is the ability to meet market specification. You know, one of the features of this style of business that often gets overlooked is our ability to predict milk production and really control the quality and the specification of that milk, which has its upsides when you look at the market. A couple of last points here. Investment in people is and is becoming an even bigger focus of our business. As the business continues to grow, it's larger than any one person can control, and it really links into this notion of managing the detail. Scale does not trump detail, never will. We've got to do the same things right day to day that any farmer has to ensure their success. You know, we need people in every department that share the passion that we have for what we do. So, look, I think moving through now to our production system, you know, I'm excited by the opportunity to talk to a few dairy farmers today, And while I probably won't get a chance to get into the detail I love to discuss, please feel free to pick up the phone. But these are some of the key themes that I thought would be worth talking about. A model obviously revolves around productivity at the cow level. We're dialed into this. Our managers track it relentlessly. We report on it daily and weekly, and obviously year on year at the corporate level. In more recent times, and it speaks to this idea of technology, but we're certainly engaging in more sensor use, both in understanding real time and some retrospective stuff. I think cow comfort is worth talking about here. The picture on the right here is a picture of one of our tunnel barns at Moxie Farm, Goolagong. This is a barn which, for all intents and purposes, I can control from my iPhone, or Nathan and Hannah, the current managers at Goolagong, can control from their iPhone. Look, we have control over the fans, the soakers, the lighting, and ventilation speed ultimately the whole way through this barn. We get alerted to faults, and we've got real-time telemetry out of this barn in terms of wind speed, temperature, and humidity. So what that does allow us to do is identify trends, identify opportunities or weaknesses that in how we deal with the environment. But certainly in terms of providing an environment for cows to succeed in, that's what we're bought into, and that's what this technology allows us to do. Feeding is probably the other part of productivity. You've got a fence with a fairly large lowen tracking down there, and it'd be remiss not to touch on this. But look, we forage test weekly. We're on a nutrition call with our group out of the US weekly, reviewing production and performance of the herd. We update rations to reflect this, and certainly I think we hold ourselves up to the Bunsen burner on a daily, if not weekly basis in terms of really getting this right, both for cow performance and cow health. Roll into parlour utilisation, as spoken to, we operate 24 hours a day, and really this is about matching the facilities and the cows around it to the capacity of the parlour. Your parlour is one of your largest assets, and our model is really revolving around optimising asset utilisation. We have technology in those parlours, probably don't have the opportunity to go right into depth, and I'm mindful of time here as we roll through, but certainly we're metering milk. We've got some further intelligence in there. Integration of technology quickly. Look, we have software across our parlours, our feeding, our herd, and our animal sensors now, as well as ultimately our housing. The way we integrate this and create intelligence on the back of it is something that we're focusing on pretty strongly at the moment. I think there'll be a lot of opportunity on the back of that, and certainly in getting insight looking forward rather than more data looking backwards. Finally, recycling. There's truly no waste products. We're about to touch on the methane digester, or biodigester, if you will, but ultimately the sand for bedding is recycled. Manure ends up back on paddocks, and liquid comes back through the barns as flushes. So we're very much focused on managing our waste stream and creating opportunity from those. Let's touch briefly on the biodigester. A couple of pictures on the right, but this is a waste to energy technology similar to that described by Cameron in his, sorry, not by Cameron, by Nick in his previous presentation. Probably fairly different scale, but nonetheless a similar technology. Ultimately, we're capturing all of the effluent out of our barns and our parlours, putting it through this methane digester where it heats up and anaerobically digests, creating biogas which runs through two gensets to produce electricity for us. It's a 3 megawatt system, fairly large, and in comparison to some of those numbers we've just worked through. But the three key challenges that this addresses for us is it allows us to create green energy, displacing thousands of tonnes of carbon which would have otherwise been used to power our site. The deficit, or the excess goes back to the grid and powers our surrounding communities. It helps us with nutrient recovery. Certainly the waste product, or the exit stream of this is a product that captures a lot of phosphorus and nitrogen. and ends up back on our paddocks pre-planting. It also allows us to greatly control our odour reduction. The waste product is ultimately broken down in a closed environment, and that is what is turned into energy. Love to talk about it more, and please call me if you're interested. On to the second business, and very mindful of time here. My River Pastoral Company is owned by my family. It's on the mid-north coast, just north of Newcastle, or Bulladila. Has been for just over 50 years now. Look, the context here very briefly is that we were very happily milking 200 cows and did so for a couple of decades. We recognised that if we wanted to continue being dairy farmers and ultimately continuing this path, we needed a strategy for growth. The picture on the left is the management team at the moment. This is my mum, my dad as well. Look, my mum's siblings and sister-in-law and my grandmother. This is the team basically at the coalface with the assistance of our staff. And as we look through these themes and our strategy for growth, recognising that we have a maturing management team is one of those. I think what we looked to do, guys, was leverage our existing resources. We had a large area that was underproductive, used for beef cows and the like. We wanted to optimise productivity across the whole of farm, and in realising that we needed to invest in some infrastructure to do that, we wanted to create a working asset that remained relevant throughout its lifespan. We look at these sort of assets as a 15-year minimum arrangement, and certainly we didn't want something that was going to be out of date at that time. Look, the decision was made. The picture at the bottom is how we've transformed what was previously pretty underproductive land. To have a pun, I'd say it was at 60% of capacity. We installed an automatic milking system, 3D Laval VMS 300 units. Don't have time to work through all of the numbers, much to my dismay, but this has allowed us will allow us to double our productivity with marginal increases in labour requirements. And it's a strategy which allows us to play to our skills. Look, we're not in the game of managing large teams of staff. We're also not seasoned conservers of forage. So, our game is grass, milk from grass, and this system allows us to do that just across a bigger site now. So that in essence is the production system. To touch on the energy solution, look, this was a greenfield project, and that certainly has impacted the feasibility. So I want to state that out front. We were faced with the decision of going down a conventional path and installing power lines. Ultimately, look, there was a large capital cost due to the nature of that project. It encouraged us to look at solar, and the numbers on the right are an annualised comparison of what we're dealing with there. Ultimately, that solution looks like an off-grid dairy. There's not a grid connection at all. We've got 100 kilowatts of panels on the roof. We've got 128 kilowatt hours of battery storage, and we have a diesel genset to back us up there, which would have been part of the picture nonetheless. What I want to say is that for us, this has certainly been a great opportunity to invest in green energy. I hope that it's something which will stand our business in a good position moving forward. I don't know if carbon neutral is something which we will be able to trade on in the future. I don't even know if we're carbon neutral, but I know we've got a lot of trees and we don't use much fossil fuel. So I'd endeavour to say we'd be in a pretty good place. So look, I think it's a trend which will serve us well, and certainly given our project and greenfield nature, it was feasible. Look, I want to move on and wrap up, mindful of time here. Some key observations. I think we need to understand the process here, and this is what's applicable to everyone. You need to know your business. You need to know it internally in terms of your strengths and weakness. You need to be a master of your production system, and Justin Walsh yesterday is a great example of someone who's mastered it, and it turns into hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I think it's also important to understand the external environment in terms of your opportunities and threats as a business, and what stands you apart with your competitive advantage. Everyone needs a process for evaluating new ideas. There's not a business in New South Wales that wouldn't benefit from new ideas. I guarantee you that. It's about how we validate and evaluate those ideas, and creating a process which puts some rigor around those, both technically but also financially, is crucial. The tools are out there, use them. I think we need to understand the future of our business. what is our strategy and how do we plan to execute, and how does that fit with the trends which will influence agribusinesses of the future. Some closing remarks finally to wrap up, and I hope I'm close to on time. I think the opportunities are immense here. You know, certainly I'm excited about the future, and I know the people I work with are. We're going to need innovation in production systems. There's always opportunities to achieve a better cost of production. The way that we grow as agribusinesses and acquire capital will be innovated as we move forward. How we approach animal well-being, how we communicate this with our consumers, and how we do the best possible job of being the ones responsible for the animals which give us our livelihood will be crucial. Environmental stewardship and waste management, it goes without saying, but these will be trends that will continue into the future. I want to wrap up there and say thank you to the businesses that have allowed me to speak about what they do today, and open it up to any questions. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you to all presenters in this final session of the symposium. We still have a good amount of time for some discussion on this. I've got quite a few questions here, but I'm going to actually come back to what's actually been already questioned on the Q&A, and it takes us back to the first presentation of this session. So to you, Sabrina, from Jeremy Skuse, have you done panting work in dairy or just feedlot? If so, how does milk yield relate to panting?
Thanks for your question, Jeremy. And I noticed that John's also asked a question on panting as well. So I'll answer both of them because it's quite related. What we did with